Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Empires of Aether, the next great turn-based strategy. Well, I think you know the rest by now, don't you? Welcome to 2023 Empires of Aether. Long time no see. It's been a minute. And I think it's time to actually get back to praising the elements the way that they deserve. And so, as always, we're chalking it up with lots of good, juicy content for you to add to the battlefield that is the land of Aether. Let's get into some updates. Soon to come. As we're looking to get back into full swing, full throttle, as we're getting into the big pro scene season coming this summer. Great things ahead for us. And as with every great addition, we want to increase the diversity of every game, as no two games should be even remotely close to one another. New landmarks, new bosses, new weather and advantage cards. But the biggest thing here in this edition is a new mechanic, and that is the advantage deck. Has previously only had advantage and announce cards. Well, we are adding in a third type of card you can draw, known as equipment. An equipment is a type of card that allows you to upgrade the standard moves that you're going to be doing on a turn-to-turn basis, with a small cost imbued within. However, if this, upgrade that you acquiesce isn't to your liking, well, you can actually sell the equipment for an immediate influx of 5 of any one resource, food or BM. This is going to put a lot of, I think, later game strategies into more prominence. It's going to really shake up the meta, I believe. And I also love the combos that we've got, shaping up for this kind of thing. And so with this new mechanic, I also wanted to put in some new abilities that tied in with this. And so the most logical addition for that was going to be Metal. Metal's got a lot of abilities already with the new chain, line of abilities. It hasn't been fully fleshed out here, but they're going to have an equipment line of abilities that we'll go into here pretty soon. We also made some additions to make Aggro Magma a little more viable. Tusken Raider Sand has been on my mind for quite a while. Adding a little bit of variance to water because their tier 1 has been lacking, and I think that's what's steering a lot of players away from it in the 10-10 or 13-13 positions. It's always been a solid 16-16, 20-20 spot, but really, the goal of this update is to make 10-10 and 13-13 a little more viable for us. Lots of more angles for it. But what we're working on in the future, anyone who's playing this game regularly knows that if you got 2 deserts in a corner and sand isn't banned, it's an instant loss. If 2020 is not picking that corner, then they're not really playing to win, because if sand does acquire that corner, it's just simply broken. So 1 desert sand viable, however not strong, whereas 2 desert sand is absolutely disgusting. So we're looking at nerfs to that here pretty soon. And then I'm not alone in this opinion, but 2020 Moon with a forest in any sniffing distance of your corner is absolutely deplorably broken. We're looking on nerfs there. Moon is one of my least favorite elements. However, garnering a lot of wins out here in the IRL stages of life. I will say that. And Arcane, getting a potential whole new rework or line of abilities, but we're throwing them a little bit of love here so they can remain a little bit more relevant here. The 2 new landmark tiles coming to the game are the Primordial Pantheon, just 2 synonymous terms with the Elemental Temple. That's all we're going for here. And what this is going to be is that the moment that you get a unit to that tile, you immediately gain access to a new ability. And that ability is going to be drawn from a deck that is concocted of the tier 1 abilities from every element in the game. I selected 1 tier 1 from each element, and when you go to draw it, the deck will shuffle, and you get that ability, and you can immediately use it if you want to. You can think of the signature tier 1 abilities that go with every single element, right? Flood for water, Battle Cry for fire, Gust for air. Those are the kinds of things that you're drawing. The catch is, though, if that element is being played at the table, you're not going to be drawing any of those elements' abilities. So if fire's at the table, you're not drawing Battle Cry. If you're yourself fire, you're not getting a second copy of Battle Cry. So you can only get abilities for elements that are not at the table. Secondly, we're getting the Ancient Merchant, which this is the landmark that is going to send around the new equipment mechanic that is going into our advantage deck here. When we sell this equipment back, it usually just goes into the ether. There are some cards that can fetch them back, new advantage cards we're putting into the space here. But the Ancient Merchant is going to offer them up to the entire table. If you get a unit there, you can purchase any equipment that has been sold there, right? No battles taking place on this tile, no ownership. This is going to be another standard run-of-the-mill neutral landmark tile. However, I do think it's going to shake some things up here. Now we get into, really, it's 4 new boss monsters, but really it's only 3 new boss tiles. And that's because the first of which we are introducing is a double boss tile. in which you take on Otakemaru, and when you kill him, you get a chance to retreat off of it, and you flip the tile over, and it becomes Shutendoji. The Oni brothers, demonic in nature. And only once you've killed Shutendoji do you actually acquire a bonus. What's cool about this, though, is that each side of the tile does count as eliminating a boss monster. So, this is going to put in a lot of weird strategies here. If you've got two boss-killing potential nations squaring off with one another, one goes in for the kill on Otakemaru, the other element could actually kill Shutendoji immediately after and actually reap all the benefits aside from killing that first boss monster. But what's also cool is you can get an entire win condition from one tile alone, which I think is really, really unique to it. But upon killing that second brother, you do access both of the Oni brothers, which have pawns in the virtual version of the game that have 25 combat value, and they can move 2 tiles per turn. That's 50 power between the two of them. Very, very strong here, but I do think it's a very, very big sacrifice that other elements of the table will be heavily involved in actually, swaying who's going to get it. 2 strange bosses. Dahlia, one of the most unique ones, it actually has no health. You have to attack it with either a general or at least an army or any combination of those, but you can't just take one soldier and throw it out there. But you can't actually lose a battle against her. Because the only way to stop her is if you roll a 6 when rolling against her. And what's cool about her is when you defeat her, you get to re-roll any dice for the rest of that game. However, you must take the second roll. So we're kind of taking the gambling out of that. However, it is a gamble to defeat her. Kind of spicy. No HP on a boss. Who would have thought? Briareus, the son of Gaia. The equipment-themed boss monster we've got here. Any 2 pieces of equipment, upon defeating him at 60 HP, any 2 pieces of equipment that have been sold, you can immediately equip those to your nation at no cost. And as we'll come to see here in a second, there's equipments that have costs of, 5 to 8 to 20. So that can be incredibly valuable. Or if you don't like any of the equipment that's been sold for whatever element you're playing that game, then you can choose to look into the advantage deck and equip the next 2 that occur in the deck at no cost. Either way, very, very big payoff potential here for a pretty modest health total. Not too strong here. And as always, with all these new additions, we always try to shake up things with weather events, some new things that we haven't seen before, some fun ones. Hopefully you guys are going to like those. And then some new advantage cards, new announce cards. Yeah? Skin in the Game version 2.0. My goodness. And then, I don't know how it slipped my mind, but the original 8 elements, right? The fire, earth, air, water expansion, the magma, lightning, metal, all that jazz. They have announce cards in which the drawer and the player of that other elemental nation gets a benefit. We didn't have it for the rest of the game. And so I added in announce cards for the rest of the elements in the game, all the way from nature to the newest umami. So some cool new announced variety there as well. And now we get to equipment, where I think, if you were to think about upgrading your state in the game, probably talking about your soldier stats is the most logical place to first go. And so that's where our first 4 equipment is actually looking at. For 5 BM, your soldiers permanently have +1 added to their dice roll when attacking. But notice this little symbol in the corner. This is what every equipment card is going to have. And this signifies that you can sell it immediately or hold it in your hand for later. Maybe you're not sure if you're going to be able to invest in it at some point. But you can sell it for 5 food or 5 BM upon drawing it. So this is going to help a lot of these cheaper elements getting into the game, right? More expensive strategies to get in there. The more turtling strategies, I think you're going to have a really, really good boost here. But what this also means is, 1 or 2 extra soldiers for the aggro strategies that might push you into that next army threshold that just increases the likelihood of you winning whatever battle you're going into. But either way, we see that the greater the cost, the greater the benefit. For 20 total resources, so any combination of food or BM, we do know that there's a fierce imbalance in many elements by design, and so you could submit 19 food, 1 BM, 20 food, 0 BM, and that's you investing in this equipment and getting the full benefit here, and that is a permanent buff for the rest of the game. The only equipment that we have here that is not a permanent buff is our forward encampment. And this is for elements that like to spawn multiple barracks on tiles, but, Poison, for example, only has that one-time use for it. If you lose that double barracks tile, you're really screwed for a lot of your strategies. And so forward encampment is the bridge to that, right? It allows us to put a second barracks on a tile here. And then we get into what I think are the more well-rounded equipments, where I think the design is really, really cool, where you can just enhance the economic output of what you're doing. Fertilizer, power drills, we can put double buildings on these tiles, or we can sell it immediately for an influx and then buy it back from the ancient merchant, whatever we're doing. Either way, I think lots of variety in how we can approach how we're playing this. Fur coats. For a total of 10 resources, your units may enter blizzard tiles. How spicy. How spicy. Don't need to melt the snow because I be living in the snow. That's a saucy, saucy choice here in the fur coats. Then we've got Lumbermill, Lucky Charm, Star of the Show. Some spicy choices on the back end here. Our lesser-owned tiles, such as swamps, deserts, and forests, are getting a little buff here. We've got wider shovels. For a total of 5 resources, your own swamps and deserts produce 1 more BM per turn. So if you've got 2 of these tiles, 2 swamps, 2 deserts, or 1 of each, it takes 3 turns to pay back this. That's not too bad if you're getting this in the opening turn. So it's a very, very valuable card. Especially if you're someone like Air or Poison who's already getting a good amount of resources from those tiles, you're getting even more. Really, really solid stuff for them. And now we get into the new abilities. One of these on here I am a little worried about, but I love the versatility. I think Metal has really fallen to the wayside. It's got a pretty standard run-of-the-mill strategy here that's always really, really solid at the 16-16 or 20-20 position. If you got 2 mountains in your corner and a certain couple of bosses on the board, there's a really good, quest strategy you can go for, and it's really hard to stop it. It's not going to do it in a flashy way, but it's going to get the job done. A lot of people have had a lot of success with that, and that's why Metal is actually the winningest element in the game. However, its 10-10 and 13-13 versatility is not there. And so I think it needs a little aggro Metal strategy here. And so what better way to do that than to integrate the new equipment mechanic into the game. Innovator, for every equipment that you've invested in, your general has +10 added to his attack. So normally he's got that +5 plus dice roll, but for every equipment that we've invested in, not sold, but actually purchased for ourselves, is going to enhance our general's attack. Your first equipment invested in is half price. So you can have those equipment that cost, 5 resources total or 20 resources total. Either way, you're getting your foot in the door there. Shark Tank. Discard 1 advantage card, activate the following, draw the next 2 equipment and add it to your hand. The versatility of this is that I might not even be going for an aggro or equipment-based approach. What if I just take this card for the influx of 10 total resources here if I just want to sell the equipment immediately? I like that variety, that versatility there. This is the card I'm worried about, though. Grappling hooks. Ignore DFs on tiles you attack. I think Metallurgical Men is in a really solid spot. I don't think it's overpowered. I don't think it's underpowered. I think it's perfectly balanced. But pairing it with this might be over the top. We shall see. DFs have already not really been in the meta, but perhaps this influx of new resources from equipment is going to make them more meta. And in fact, that's one of my considerations, one of my hopes for the changes that will happen to the overall game, because I think defensive fortifications are super broken. People don't use them enough. Is grappling hooks going to be too powerful? Yay or nay? You decide. Armed and ready, search the advantage card, or search the advantage deck for the next equipment and immediately equip it at no cost. This could be tremendously valuable if you get one of the 20 cost equipments or the 5 cost one, but it's a tier 2, it's solid, it gives you an immediate buff on your innovator passive if you're rocking with that. I think it's a solid card. I think it's very valuable at tier 2. But the cool changes that we're making here are to honed armor and sharpened steel. The very first abilities I made for metal, actually, whenever the element was devised, now getting a small buff because we're just adding flavor text to it. These cards count as equipment. And what's cool is that both of these abilities can be used twice. So if you use it twice, guess what? That is counted as 2 pieces of equipment invested in for your innovator. Really solid. I think if you're going to go for an aggressive strategy, you're not ever touching honed armor. Sharpened steel has always been the better option anyway for boss killing potential with your metallurgical men. But it's definitely going to make it a valid tier 1 choice. And so I think if you're going to go for an aggro metal strategy, it's probably Innovator, Shark Tank, Sharpened Steel. It's going to feel really weird not taking ore tiles with you. But that's what's cool about this game, right? Totally different spins on how you played elements. What is now 2 years ago. 2 years we've been working on this game. Pretty wild that we've hit that timeline point. So those are the new abilities. Upload into metal. And here's Magro additions. I really like a couple of these on here. Incinerator, adding a new text for equipment as well. When your general is victorious in battle, destroy an invested equipment they own and receive 5 of 1 resource. So if they don't have an equipment, you're still getting that 5 of 1 resource. You're not taking it from them, you're just getting an extra 5 resources. a solid passive. I think you pair this with San Andreas' Fault, and you're getting some good benefits there. But what's really, really cool about this that I think is going to have really, really solid 10-10 or 13-13 viability for Magma, which has always been slightly decent with cheap tiles in the corner. If you ever get, Sand and Poison Ban and you're the last pick with all these really crappy tiles in your corner, Magma's never a bad choice because they have that half tile purchase, the free resource buildings. They can get you in the game pretty quickly, and then you can always convert them to Volcanoes. Pioneers, only available at 10-10 or 13-13, start the game with 3 soldiers on your capital. However, you're sacrificing that Volcano passive until you hit tier 2. But I think if you play your cards right, you're still hitting tier 2 on turn 3 like a normal human being. You might not even have Volcanoes if you're running this strategy. This is just positioning yourself on the board, spreading out, fanning out, or putting all of your eggs in one basket to jump on an opponent whenever you hit that power spike. And then Magro, I think a pretty valuable card. If you're going to run the Pioneers in your general just down the short side, I think it's going to have a lot of viability in just running it down, especially with equipment in the game, getting 5 resources here and there to invest in more soldiers. Really, really solid here. So maybe you're taking Pioneers Magro and the free Volcano in tier 1, or you're taking Pioneers Magro and the half tile purchase with a free resource building on it to get your Volcanoes in tier 2. Something like that maybe with the other cards we have in San Andreas' Fault and the Monument. Something like that is what I'm envisioning in my head for the Magro package. Now we got Tusken Raiders. It is no secret that I'm a lover of Star Wars. And Sand is always had its abilities, just been a bunch of Star Wars memes. So why not just sink into it even more? Tusken Raiders in the game, an aggro Sand version that I'm hoping you don't need 2 deserts to do so. And if you got 2 deserts in your corner and you're running the strategy, I think you're losing anyway. So this is hopefully a cheeky 1 desert viable Sand strategy here. We've got the classic Tusken Raider quote up in their signature card here. You can train soldiers on desert without a barracks, and these soldiers cost 2 food. So a discounted rate on a very, very cheap tile for you. Perhaps this is the 10-10 or 13-13 viability we're looking for. Then, and not just the men, I was curious about the positioning of this being a tier 1, but I don't think it's too shabby. It's weird to have a mid-game invested card that is a tier 1 passive. But I was thinking about the tier 2s that you would run with a strategy like this. And this is where I think Mirage and Locust synergize with each other really, really well. Use Mirage to just hit them with a really, really solid punch. And then Locust is to just keep them down to where they can't retaliate. And then you obviously need a couple more deserts in there, so you're not going to take that. So where would it go? You're not getting a tier 3 with this strategy usually, so we're going tier 1 with it. And so I think it made sense to me. But if we've got discounted soldiers, we can get armies pretty regularly. And with equipment in the game now, we can sell that off to get more soldiers more rapidly as well. And this is going to allow us to draw more advantage cards, which might even allow us to draw more pieces of equipment as well. Raider, it's in the name. Your soldiers have +1 when attacking unknown tiles or the own tiles furthest from their capital. Sand has had no combat bonuses for a while now. But as long as you're attacking on the outside, raiding the outskirts settlements is my vision here, you're getting a bonus. So what this doesn't allow you to do, though, is to cut down the middle, going through the temple through some teleportation ability, and go 2 tiles away and get this bonus, right? You have to carve it up from the outside and work your way in. But if they're only 3 tiles out from their base, you take that 3rd one, well then guess what? Then 2 tiles is as far as they go out. So it kind of is a chain reaction in how it's working there. Wutini, lovely Jawa quote here. Great verbiage by the Jawa in Star Wars. They're thieves, right? They're garbage collectors is what they are. Upon winning a battle, take 1 equipment from their hand. You're playing Go Fish. You defeat them in battle and you say, hey, you got any equipment? If they say no, all right. You may remove 1 that has been invested in and place it in your hand. If they do have it, then you're taking it from them to either be invested in or sell it right away for resources. And then, if Ancient Merchant is on the board, I do love these little one-of interactions with, landmark tiles that may or may not appear on the board. If you get to the Ancient Merchant, you just get to pluck an equipment that has been sold in the game for free. Equip it for free. I like that. I think that's got some value there. Obviously, this is not a take it every game. You got to be all in on this aggro approach. I think it's solid, though. Water. Ebb and Flow. Kind of like a stance change ability. where you always have one of these abilities active. If you use Ebb, it becomes Flow. If you use Flow, it becomes Ebb. You can only use one per turn, right? And what it is, it's a more aggro or perhaps just a way for Water to stave off any outside aggression in the 10-10 position, with some, mid to late game potential with this extra drawing of advantage cards if you're actually using these effects. But Merpeople has always been a fairly aggressive passive that Water has, and I've always thought it's incredibly strong. In fact, borderline broken. But not too much versatility in the 10-10 or 13-13 position except to buy an extra tile on turn 1. But maybe, just maybe, you can fan your Merpeople and your General out separate ways and attack in 2 different angles and put too much pressure on your opponent for them to be able to hold you off. Perhaps. We shall see. But how this card works is when you're actually in the game, there are 2 sides. So when you flip Ebb, it's Flow on the other side. Pretty nice there. And then Arcane. No love for quite some time now. But they need a monument. In fact, they're one of the only elements currently in the game without one. Well, they got one. And it's very, very powerful for them. Generating a free apprentice every turn. Pretty basic text here. But it's something that they needed, right? And of course, we had to give them a flavor text spell for their equipment. If you sell an equipment, your apprentices have an increased value going from 15 to 20. Just a significant buff and an easy couple of spells to accomplish, actually. And so I think this gives Arcane a little more viability. Arcane's always been kind of secretly tough. Only the real ones know about it. Have tried it out, but it's always in the game. It's got very sneaky ways of winning. Completing all of your spells is a guaranteed win condition, and then eventually you got enough power to take on bosses or even an opponent. Absolutely. Arcane, guys, try it out. Anyways, this is the 2023 update to Empires of Aether, the first update of this year. It's been a hot minute, been a whole busy time of life over here on my end. The next time you boot up the game, these updates are already in there. By the time you have read this, it's already in there. I love you guys. See you at the next table.